Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Vampire Hunter D from 1985. Vampire Hunter D is credited with being one of the first OVAs, or direct-to-video animated movies in Japan, that is aimed specifically and explicitly at a teenage male and older adult audience. And it's actually kind of one of the first animes to really make it over here and get broadcast on TV in the mid-90s, which is how I saw it as someone who's really hungry to get into anime and more adult animation. And in a lot of ways, it's very good at appealing to that and being kind of a real good starter anime, a real good starter film if you're younger and you want to get into something more violent, something that's not necessarily morally complex or has a good script, or is going to involve you in too many complex emotions or situations, but it is very violent, and you see some boobs in it and stuff. Not that many boobs, but some nice boobs. And it gives you a really surface level kind of adult violent horror animated film that is basically kind of what you'd specifically be looking for when you're watching a film like Vampire Hunter D. Like, you know, you want a cheeseburger and you get a cheeseburger and you're satisfied with it. I hadn't seen this film in a long time. I think it's maybe been a decade, but it used to be a film that I really liked. I had the TV version, which has a lot less nudity. In fact, it had no nudity, and it had a lot less violence, which is a lot less fun, frankly. It was kind of the cool thing that I was watching this really violent post-apocalyptic vampire western, and that I was kind of like in the know and I could handle this kind of a movie. But it's really like training wheels, and it was a good training wheels kind of movie for America, because anyone I knew who was into anime knew what Vampire Hunter D was. It was one of the three movies that played on the Sci-Fi Channel then. It was like this, Akira, and Robot Carnival. Even though I liked all three, and I don't like them as much now, or at least two of them, obviously, even though then we all knew Akira was the best one. This was one you could just sit back, relax, and watch, and that was kind of the intent in making it. And I think that's what made Vampire Hunter D kind of a classic at the time, but also kind of holds it back from me really being into it now. Vampire Hunter D takes place in 12090 AD, and it's in this post-nuclear Holocaust world, which they never really bring up, but take their word for it, I guess. And this girl, Doris, has been bitten by a vampire, Count Magnus Lee, after he feels she is on his property. Or did he really just bite her? I don't know. I don't know his property lines. He bites her, and then Doris is searching for a vampire hunter when she stumbles across Vampire Hunter D and hires him to take out Magnus Lee and protect her from either becoming a vampire or his bride, or both. And Vampire Hunter D has to go after Count Magnus Lee and go to his castle several times and save her, and hopefully eventually kill Count Magnus Lee. This film, which was directed by Toyo Ashida, which I think I pronounced right this time. Toyo Ashida kind of made this film as something like adults could sit down and kick back and watch, instead of, you know, more family-friendly fare, which was what most animation and OVAs at the time were. And this is about 3 years before Akira in Japan. In America, think about how anime kind of got released in America. It all just kind of got released at once sometimes. So the dates are very confusing. I mean, Akira, it just feels like it came out in the 90s in America, but it was 88. This was 85. And it was actually a cheaper production. They didn't have a huge budget. You can obviously tell that. And I keep reading how it had the budget of like a TV show, and I actually think it looks better than most TV shows, like a step above. It looks like the TV movie special of an animated show. They gave it a little bit more money to, but they used it effectively. There are certain times it's not as obvious as others. They use their shots well. They don't have it glaring too often. Sometimes it very much is, but it's definitely not like the budget Akira had, for example. That leads it down this kind of cheaper horror movie path. It's also very American and European influence. It kind of has the idea of shame, that Vampire Hunter D comes into town and everybody loves him, and then of course Doris has the little brother Dan who's obsessed with him, which is straight out of Shane, and that this is considered to be very Hammer film influence. I don't really get that as much, I guess, because there's vampires in it, so sure. The Shane thing is definitely there, and it is more Western. It's more something that America could get into because it's using tropes that America is very much used to. The Shane thing is in so many different movies. I like the violence in this. I like the action sequences. I think Vampire Hunter D is a cool character, and thought so when I was a kid getting into anime through the Sci-Fi Channel. And it was cool for the Sci-Fi Channel to actually play some of this stuff. Unlike Robot Carnival, which I don't really understand why they had the rights to that one. Vampire Hunter D was a major title. It came out on VHS here. Streamline considered it a major title. It sold incredibly well, and it was a big hit, so it was actually kind of a bigger get. It was more of an understandable get, and I remember watching it in my living room tons of times with tons of people, and people were like, oh my god, I've wanted to see this. It was a major movie, and it actually had a theatrical run in 1992 at kind of more art houses. Ghost in the Shell did also. That was kind of a semi of a thing. They tried to do more theatrical anime stuff, but this was very early. One of the early anime films that they really tried to have be more of a success. It's very much in that heavy metal style. It is kind of looser. It's not too complex. It does have some gratuitous nudity. I mean, one time this guy like rips her shirt and her boob pops out, and I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then later there's a scene with her just in the shower, which I remember they totally cut out of the sci-fi version, and it doesn't really need to be in there. But that's kind of this movie. The script isn't very tight. It feels like you're watching a couple different movies. Like they go to the castle in one scene, then they come back to the house, then they go to the castle again. I used to, for some reason, think they only went to the castle once, which would probably be like a much better movie. Them going back and forth is like, ugh, the script is like so basic. Maybe I'm asking for more complexity behind my storytelling, and Vampire Hunter D is just not the kind of film that's going to give it to me. But it's one thing to be poppy and silly and stupid and have violence and tits and stuff, but it's another thing to be as rudimentary as it is. And I think, sure, it is a good movie that you could like kick back with your friends and have some beers and talk over certain parts too. It actually, I think, works for that really well, and some of it kind of took me back to being really into this and feeling like I'm more of an adult watching it. But now that I am an adult, I am like, well, this is a little silly. This feels like something that I maybe should not have revisited and didn't really live up to the charm that it had when I was a kid. It just doesn't have a real through line through it. It does feel like I'm watching several films, and not in a good way. It just feels like disorganized a lot of the time. The latter half of it takes itself a little too seriously, whereas the front half was a little more fun and adventure-y and silly, and you can kind of get into that more, especially with the kind of film it is. But I never remember really loving towards the end when they go back to the castle. Even when I was into this movie, I felt like that was the worst part of the movie, and it really drags it down, and drags it down to a place you can never really get out of with Vampire Hunter D. I'm just always like, oh, we're back again. Do you really want Luke and Han Solo to go back to the Death Star? Like, you want them to go and then leave? And I kind of like that I experienced Vampire Hunter D, and I'm glad that I saw it again and can now go, yeah, I don't need to do that again. It works to get people into it, and it worked at the time when things were unavailable. But as media has changed and anime is more available and more animation is available, I don't think this film really lives up to that. Whereas a film like Akira is a great movie, and people are going to be talking about that in 50 years. When people aren't talking about Vampire Hunter D, I kind of won't be surprised, because it's like not really that good. Sometimes people go, well, if the artistic intent works, then it's a successful film. And I think in that view, sure. Because I grew up watching it with an English dub, I kind of felt weird not watching it as an English dub. So maybe like the Japanese script is far more advanced, but it felt like the dialogue was not its only problem. It's a fun, dumb, kind of silly movie. The director of this made Fists of the North Star also, which I actually haven't seen. I actually never saw the sequel to Vampire Hunter D. I think it helped get me to a certain place, and sometimes there's certain things that you will be embarrassed of in your past, but it helped make you who you are today. And I guess in a lot of ways, Vampire Hunter D got me more into kind of more adult animation and showed me I didn't have to be ashamed or like not be able to find things in animation that I could like. I didn't have to stop watching cartoons and stop watching anime because I couldn't find it, or it wasn't available, or I was like too old or something silly and stupid like that. I could grow with it, and Vampire Hunter D for me signaled that at the time. But it's really kind of for me now like training wheels. Like, I would never ride a bike now with training wheels. Well, I never ride a bike in general, so it's a bad analogy, but you wouldn't go back to that. It would be very silly. And Vampire Hunter D for me felt like going back. It's not like heavy metal or Ralph Bakshi stuff that kind of is very indulgent in the sexy girls and the violence. That stuff for me is fun. I can always actually watch that and enjoy it. This just felt like stupid and rudimentary and trying to relive being 13. I wasn't trying to relive my youth, but watching this movie kind of made me think about that. Kind of made me think like, you know, you really can't go back to that. I don't think Vampire Hunter D will have the same feeling I used to have from it, just because I've gotten older, and it's just not really surprising and as violent and as cool. But I think this movie did the best it could with what it had going for it. It's good what it did for me personally and what it did historically for anime. It got more people into anime in America. It got adult audiences interested in anime in Japan. And really, none of that is a bad thing. It isn't a great movie. Sometimes you'll notice in the history of film and animation, there's certain films that definitely were a turning point and changed a lot, but just certainly really honestly weren't that great and aren't classics themselves. It's just what they did has more of a lasting impact than the film probably deserves. But I think Vampire Hunter D is an okay movie that has an excellent reputation and influence. So if you have seen Vampire Hunter D and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.